Members, good morning. We have a briefing of 2 hours. This is scheduled to end at 1 o'clock. Let's welcome the Financial Secretary, the Deputy Financial Secretary, Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury, as well as their team. Members who would like to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. I will now first ask the FS Financial Secretary to give us an introductory remark.
主席，大家唔使咁激動，聽下。
Please calm down. Let's first hear from the Financial Secretary. Members, Chairman, citizens of Hong Kong, I and my team attends this Financial Finance Committee meeting in response to the budget and to listen to members' views and answer questions. Last year, Hong Kong's economy registered a moderate growth of 2.5%. The overall export of goods was restored to 4.3% in real terms. The overall export of service also, in real term, increased by 2.5%. And the export of service for visitors has also grown. Number of visitors has increased to 45 million. However, with the change in consumption pattern, there is a slight drop of private consumption expenditure by 0.6%. In relation to the labor market, it remained tight. The seasonally adjusted unemployment rate in the fourth quarter stayed at 3.1%, which is low. Employment earnings registered an increase in real term. There is a mild increase in inflation. The underlying consumer price increased by 1.1%. However, given the uncertain external environment and increasing trade protectionism, Hong Kong's export of goods may be affected, but there are still a number of positive factors. Well, we have better cross-boundary arrangements, supporting measures from the government. We believe that more visitors will be attracted to come to Hong Kong. However, we have a very strong Hong Kong dollars. To some extent, this will suppress the spending power of visitors. The economic sentiment has improved. On top of that, there is a proactive stimulating measures by the mainland government, given the more relaxed financial condition and the various measures from the Hong Kong SAR government. In domestic demand will be given support, which is conducive to fixed asset investment. Well, on top of that, there is an increase in employment earnings. We think that the private consumption will continue to be stable. We predict that there will be a real-term increase in our GDP by about 2 to 3%. However, the world's ever-changing. We're at a critical juncture. We have to take into account of our local situation and cultivate new quality productive forces to promote high-quality development. We have to make use of innovation technology to create new drive, new model, to expedite the cultivation of new industries and for traditional industries to transform and upgrade. We make use of AI, which is a core of a new quality productive force. We will set up an R&D institute for AI and promote frontier research, commercialization, and application scenarios. We will organize the International Young Scientists Forum on AI and the International Conference on Embodied AI Robot. We'll bring together top-notch enterprises, academics, investors, and showcase our products. This will make Hong Kong an international exchange hub for AI. We'll also devote resources to universities and give them resources so that they will have a chance to showcase their product. In terms of programming and AI learning, technology learning, we will devote resources to help schools so that students can combine theory and practical learning. This will also arouse their interest in the use of innovation technology. In this regard, Tencent, Alibaba have expressed their support in this regard. To assist financing of specialist technology and biotechnology companies, the Hong Kong EX is preparing the Technology Enterprise Channel, which facilitates preparation work for companies to be listed. We're also taking stock of arrangements in relation to tax deductions for licensing fees for the use of IP rights. We will also expedite the development of IP-intensive industries. In relation to the North Metropolis, we think it is very important to Hong Kong. We will expedite this development. In the budget, we put in place measures to speed up the development. We will put in place resources as a matter of priority. The main areas include the Hong Kong Park, Phase 1 of the He Corporation area, Sentient Technopole, Sandy Ridge Data Center, as well as the identification of sites for convention and exhibition facilities. In the budget, you'll find work directions set out for the strategic positioning of 3 centers in one hub. That includes strengthening traditional industries and explore new growth areas, cultivate new industries for a more diversified economic structure, to expand markets, find new capitals, and expand our circle of friends. We will enhance our advantage as an international asset management center and risk management center. We will also expedite development in new areas such as fintech, digital financing, gold, and commodity trading. We'll also attract enterprises to come to Hong Kong to set up base for a high-value added supply chain management center. The TTC will work with major e-commerce platforms to provide one-on-one advisory service. We'll also have the 2nd edition of Hong Kong Shopping Festival. We will assist SMEs to boost their online sales and expand and tap into the mainland market. In terms of shipping, we have set aside resources to expedite the development of smart port, as well as development of high-value added shipping services to enhance efficiency. In other areas such as aviation hub, healthcare, culture and creativity, as well as education, we have put in place measures. We will also promote the development of the tourism industry. We will devote resources for the implementation of Tourism is Everywhere, as well as the blueprint. We'll also look into turning the waterfront and former pier site of the Hong Kong Station into a new harbourfront landmark. We have considered that there are challenges faced by the commercial real estate sector. There is a high vacancy rate for offices. There is sufficient supply, so in the future, in the coming year, the government will not launch any sale of commercial sites so that there will be time for the market to digest existing supply. We also consider rezoning the use of commercial sites into residential sites and give them more flexibility to boost confidence. We also propose to enhance the maximum value of properties, residential or non-residential, from 3 million to 4 million when it comes to the payment of stamp duty. The stamp duty payment for that will be $100. It took effect on the same day. This will benefit about 15% of transactions. We have launched the reinforced version of the fiscal consolidation program. We will strictly contain public expenditure. Well, in 2027 to 27-28, there will be a cut of government expenditure, recurrent one, 7%. Civil service establishment will be reduced by 2% in 26-27 and 27-28. In this year, we'll cut 10,000 posts. While we contained public expenditure, we will carefully balance the impact on the public and we will also endeavor to maintain public services. At the same time, we will expedite development in the North Metropolis as well as other important infrastructure. We encourage government departments in the use of technology to streamline procedures and also promote digital transformation. We will also enhance the technological proficiency of civil servants. We will provide training to enhance their efficiency. Taking into account our tax competitiveness as well as the user pay principle, we will suitably consider increasing source of revenue while reducing the impact on the general public. That includes increasing the air passenger departure tax as well as a review various fees of government tunnels and main routes. Under the reinforced program, we aim to gradually and progressively restore operating account to a balance. We think that in 26-27 there will be a surplus. In relation to capital account, since we want to expedite works in the northern metropolis as well as other projects relating to the economy as well as people's livelihood, we think that in the medium term there will be a deficit. But the level will drop starting from 26-27. Taking into account the net receipt from bonds, the consolidated account in 28-29 will see a surplus. The debt to GDP ratio in this period will be 16.5%. Well, there will be a peak in public works. The expenditure in this regard in the medium term will increase from $90 billion every year to $120 billion every year. We will make use of innovative approaches and tap into market forces to take forward these projects. Now, these approaches include public-private partnership, in-situ exchange, as well as the trial of large-scale land disposal. We'll also issue bonds to finance these capital works. However, the capital obtained will not be used on recurrent expenditure. We will vigorously abide by the fiscal discipline. We think that with the expansion of bond issuance between 25-26 and 29-30, the 5-year period, every year we will issue about $150 to $195 billion in bond. 56% of them will be used to refinance short-term debt that are due. In our medium-term forecast, the debt to GDP ratio will stay at about 12 to 16.5%, which is very, very steady as well as controllable and way below the level of other advanced economies. We're in the face of complicated major external environment. We want to make use of reform to respond to changes. We want to drive development using innovation and use technology to lead our path into the future. We have put in place a number of measures to enhance our fiscal management to restore balance in our books. We'll make use of one country, two systems advantage. We will better integrate into the national development, tap, and also dovetail into national development strategies. We'll make our contributions to the modernization of our country. We have prepared a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint has been given to members. I'm not going to go through it. We'll be happy to listen to members' views and answer questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. We still have 106 minutes left. 57 members would like to ask questions. Based on past experience, I think every member will have 4 minutes. Question and answers included. I'll read out the name of the first 25 members. First, Ms. Chen Yutming. Second, Mr. Chairman Kong, Tang Fei, Doreen Kong, Eunice Young, Chen Hock Fong, Dominic Lee, Jeffrey Lam, Frankie Yik, Michael Tian, Tommy Zhang, Shanghai Long, Chu Kwok Kang, Lo Wai Kwok, Chen Hang Pan, Reverend Kun, Robert Lee, Chan Cho Hang, Leung Yok Wai, Dick Chi Yun, Tony Che, Lam Chan Sing, Andrew Lam, Priscilla Leung, and Edward Lau. Let's first start with Ms. Chen. I'm very lucky this morning. I'm the first. I thank the Financial Secretary for proposing measures to cut expenditure. He has shown us his determination. He also proposed increasing resources to develop the northern metropolis. We really appreciate that. In the past few years, the government has recorded a large amount of deficit. In the coming few years, public expenditure on works will increase because it's a peak period. Now that the government has differentiated between capital accounts and operating accounts, and he's told us that he's confident that in the coming 3 to 4 years, there will be a balance in the books. I want to ask him, is he still as confident in relation to the capital account? When will there be a balance? Now you have defined AI as a critical industry. How do you make use of AI to reduce expenditure? How effective do you think it will be?
Thank you. Chair, thank you. Ms. Chen. In the enforced version of the fiscal consolidation program, saving costs is the main focus. This is supplemented by developing new sources of revenue. In 2026-27, we will have a balance, and in 2027-28 we should have a surplus in the operating account. As for the capital account, as said before, we need to seize the timing, the window for development, so that we can create capacity for our future economy and nurture the growth engine of technology. So we need to invest heavily in the Northern Metropolis. According to last year's estimations, for the next 5 years, every year we would need to invest $10 billion. So altogether, it would be approximately $120 billion. Considering the land sale revenue, the current market situation is more or less stabilized. But then for the commercial property market, it takes some time to absorb the supply. So we will not have any commercial sites put on sale this year. We will wait until it has recovered. And in the medium range, we think issuing bonds appropriately will be the way to go. We now have a good reputation. We are supported by the market with the issuance of bonds. If we can have more capital to invest in the development of Northern Metropolis and other public works projects to create capacity for our future, to create more opportunities, we believe this is the right approach. As for the consolidated account, it will take longer to achieve a balance. That's the way to go. Well, the other question on AI, you haven't answered this. I apologize. For AI, we have several directions of development. AI is definitely a core industry. We need to think about the computing power, data, capital, and talent. AI would also empower other industries, say AI+. We would have it power the production industries. It will also power homes. So basically, it will be a core industry itself. It will also empower other industries. How will it save costs? I think the Financial Secretary wouldn't be able to give you a specific figure now. Next, Professor Chairman Kong. Thank you. I know it is hard to produce a budget, and I think the government has had comprehensively considered different factors. We have talked about cutting costs in education as well as the $2 transport concession scheme. I think the government has been quite careful in cutting the costs. I thank the Financial Secretary for his efforts and for incorporating feedback of members. But we need to do more in developing new sources of revenue. According to previous figures, say in land sale revenue or stamp duty revenue, I am not talking about the peak. I'm just talking about 21-22 figures, right? Then we have $140 billion in land sale revenue. We have a 14.5% government revenue. Now we only have it account for 3% revenue. And back then we have a deficit of stamp duty revenue of $100 billion. And before it would account for 15% of the government revenue. Now it only accounts for 10%. I can see that the estimates seem to be quite prudent, and it probably shows that the government has relatively low expectations. Say for operating account revenue, we have the air passenger departure tax. We also have the boundary facilities fee to be charged on private vehicle owners going through land boundary control points. So I want to ask, say, for the FSTB or the Development Bureau, say for land sale revenue or stamp duty revenue, can we do more in getting a higher revenue, because these are major revenue sources for Hong Kong, especially now that we are not putting up any commercial lots for sale. Can we have more sites, say, for student accommodation? Then we will still have some land sale revenue. On the property market with property policies, we're trying to prevent the overheating of the property market. Now we need to prevent the overcooling of the property market. We need to do more. On the boundary facilities fee, I have reservations because we were trying to promote integration between mainland and Hong Kong. I saw from the figures in 2023, we have approximately 5.37 million vehicles coming into and going out of Hong Kong via land boundary control points. I don't know how the administration derived the figure of $200. Well, 4-minute time limit is for questions and answers. You have already asked 3 questions in your past 3 minutes. I will probably just ask the financial secretary to answer the first 2 parts of your questions. Thank you. On the land premium revenue. Before, land premium revenue is one of the major revenue sources of the government to support the development of other aspects. And we had less land supply as a result, and we had skyrocketing property prices. So we no longer want to rely on land premium revenue. We want to rely on other sources of revenue instead. On land premium revenue, we want to make sure we have adequate land supply both in the public and private sectors to make sure everyone has good housing. And that's the way to go for us in future. I will perhaps answer in detail the other parts of the questions for other members' questions. Mr. Tang Fei. We have quite comprehensive contents in the budget. I have 3 questions. I will perhaps mention the paragraph as well. We will have talked about AI extensively in the budget. We are investing, say, approximately $1 billion. And some say it's not much because they are saying in the mainland they're investing a lot more heavily in AI. I want to talk about in particular paragraph 45 on supporting the installation of smart production lines. We now have over 100 smart production lines. It covers various industries. I want to ask about the scale of production lines because 10 people would be a production line. 100 people would also be a production line. We have seen the HKUST have specific courses that are relevant to smart production lines. If we have 100 production lines that are only of 10 people, that is limited in potential. But if we have larger scale production lines, it would be very beneficial. So can we talk more about this? And especially now that we're moving towards the University of Applied Sciences. And in paragraph 150, we have now some self-financing post-secondary institutions that can admit now that are mainland students. But there are some institutions that still can't admit mainland students. Since you're saying that we are to create education as an industry, will you relax the restrictions on institutions on admission? My next question is on paragraph 231. For the cutting of number of civil servants of 10,000 posts. Can you provide more information on this? Because I have received some inquiries from specialist civil servants or lower skilled civil servants. They want to know the criteria for cutting the 10,000 posts. And will they be contract positions? Financial Secretary, please have regard to the time limit when you answer the questions. AI is our future. It is also the future of the different economies in terms of competitiveness. We can see that the US has attached great importance to development of AI, for example. We need to make sure we are developing AI. That's why we have talked about AI extensively in the budget, and we are investing heavily in AI. But developing AI, of course, requires significant investment. So apart from providing policy support and infrastructure, it is more important for us to leverage on market forces. We have the industry-oriented fund and other funds. We are encouraging the private sector to match the funds on a matching basis to develop AI. We have a number of events held in relation to AI that should attract more capital and talent on production lines, smart production lines. How many people there are, it really depends on the industry. But the focus is to leverage on technologies. And therefore, there should not be as much manpower. It is more about creating capacity. Then we can engage more manpower. I think there will be other members who will ask about posts of civil servants. You can answer that later, Mr. Rincon. I'm very happy to hear that there will be an reinforced version of the fiscal consolidation program, but some say this is too prudent and not ambitious enough. In 2021-22 budget, in paragraph 167, you talked about the cause of deficit is because the increase in government expenditure is higher than the increase in government revenue, especially for recurrent expenditure. But it's just $107 billion, and now it has gone to $140 billion. And you said last year that we should enter a phase of stabilizing recurrent expenditure. So since 2021-22, we have not seen the recurrent expenditure fall. Instead, we have seen it rise. So would you say, the Financial Secretary, that we have the measures come too late? On the $2 transport concession scheme, in 2021, the $2 transport concession scheme has had a comprehensive review. And in the report on page 7, paragraph 37, for elderly octopus card holders or disability card holders, they would write less than 70 times per month on public transport. It was written so in the report then. So when you're talking about limiting the trips to 240, how have you derived this figure? When we talk about the $2 flat rate come 80% off, how much are we saving in costs? Do you have any scientific basis for deriving such figures? Financial Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Rincon. When we talk about our fiscal consolidation program in 2022-23, we have just recovered from the pandemic, and we haven't really consolidated our recovery progress for citizens or SMEs. They want the government to provide them with support at that stage so as to stabilize our recovery progress. So in 22-23, we have many counter-cyclical measures and policy support. Once we have entered 2023, 24, 24, 25, we have made some adjustments. So that was the approach that we took. We want to make sure we were being prudent, especially when faced with geopolitical tensions. We have seen capital flows changing quite rapidly, and the market sentiment also changed quite rapidly. So we had to be careful. On the $2 transport concession scheme, our policy considerations are as follows. many elderly persons from their 60s or even when they're at 65, they are still quite healthy. They can go outside, they would want to visit their families, or they would have their spouses unfortunately hospitalized. They would have to visit them in the hospitals. So we want to have a lower or a higher number of trips. And as you said, as quoted in the report, we do not have people that will travel that frequently. But we want to accommodate the special circumstances. Do you have any specific figures on saving costs? We should be able to save $600 million in 2025-26. We cannot have that just yet because we have to wait until the octopus system upgrades. Thank you.
Ms. Eunice Yung, I support this year's budget, especially in relation to enhancing industries where we have an advantage. The government has done a lot on the use of technology and AI. How do we use technology to attract enterprises and talents? This is where we can showcase the government's strength. We can further enhance it. There is an allocation of $1 billion to set up the AI R&D Institute. We have to leverage our advantage on the use of AI in Hong Kong, in particular the use of AI in the government. We have to balance our books. We have this reinforced version of the physical consolidation program. We've seen elements of technology incorporated in them. So technology was used in containing public expenditure and increasing revenue. So we need to make better use of it to take us forward. I see that the government proposes to streamline the application procedure for low Earth orbit satellites. Well, there are cooperations with the mainland to launch satellites. Also initiatives to enhance R&D in 5G, 6G. Mainland China has launched the first satellite that uses 5G, 6G. Do we have any major programs to enable Hong Kong to join the space program of our country? Now we have low altitude economy. We have the regulatory sandbox in place. We're now moving from the first phase to the second phase. I would like to know about the development of low Earth orbit satellites. I have come into contact with some financing companies. They think that there is room for improvement in this regard. It's not just about launching these satellites. We can use the facilities on the mainland. But we can make use of our advantage as a financing center, our advantage as an international financial center. We can attract enterprises to come to establish their foothold in Hong Kong. I would like to see what the government, what plans the government has. And that is also, I would like to know more about plans in relation to space programs. Ms. Yung's right. The application of AI is wide. Low Earth orbit satellite is one of the technologies involved. We have strong R&D capabilities in our universities. In our country's moon landing mission, there are professors from our universities that are part of the programs. We mentioned about Chang'e 8 mission. We feel very proud to be part of these programs, and we give these programs our full support. Members have talked about a low altitude economy and other areas. We have set up a working group on the development of low altitude economy. We're happy to hear members' views so that we can improve our measures to make them more effective. there is good development from 5G to 6G. 6G is 20 times faster. 6G is badly needed in remote areas. So I asked the government to focus on development of 6G as well as low Earth orbit satellites. Mr. Chen, I know that it is a difficult task for the government. It's difficult for the government to expand source of revenue when the economy is not doing too well. Well, we've heard from elderly people living in remote areas. Yes, the adjustment of the transport subsidy has resolved the issue, the problem of taking short rides in long-haul services. But there are problems as well. Some elderly people have to take ferry rides. Each trip costs about $20–30. They have no other transportation, no other alternative transportation mode because they have to take the ferry to see the doctor for follow-ups. So I think the government should also think about the economy instead of just thinking about cutting expenditure. For elderly people living in remote areas, will you offer them 50% discount in their fares so that they can go out more, which gives a boost to the silver economy consumption? We proposed a measure to give the government $10 billion a year for a tenancy scheme. This will give a sense of happiness to residents because we have conducted a survey. 80% of the respondents, that is public housing tenants who would like to buy the flat they're living in. Thank you, Mr. Chen. He mentioned about elderly residents in remote areas. I thank him for sharing with us his observation. We'll look into it further. We have studied the travel or commute patterns of elderly people. 8 trips a day, 240 trips a month covers 99% of the travel patterns of elderly people. We think that this is an appropriate adjustment and it's on the generous side. We have heard the views of the member in relation to the tenancy purchase program, tenancy purchase scheme. We have to look further into it. This is related to the government's policy in relation to property ownership. We have in the pipeline a large number of subsidized flat for housing. The TPS, the tenancy purchase scheme, is one thing. How does it relate to the other programs of subsidized flat for sale? We have to look further into it. We can't make a decision yet. We note the members' views and we will further consider it. Mr. Dominic Lee, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Financial Secretary for spending 2 hours to deliver the budget. He has spent a lot of coverage on the development of the Northern Metropolis. There are 28,000 words in the budget, but 2 words are missing quite glaringly. A few words are missing quite glaringly. That is Lantau tomorrow. You also mentioned about rezoning commercial site to residential use. Lantau tomorrow is CBD3. Does it mean the absence of it? Does it mean that it's been aborted? Anyway, whatever the reason, we understand that a lot of money has been spent on Lantau Tomorrow, say for example, site investigation and consultant fees. It may still be in the pipeline, but pushed back. We may move ahead with the Northern Metropolis first, but in relation to the money spent on advanced work, can they be shelved? Or is it the case that we have to keep pumping money into it? Thank you. In relation to Lantau Tomorrow, we think that we need time to have some further consideration. We will give priority to the Northern Metropolis because we want to speed up this project. Lantau Tomorrow comes after. The Northern Metropolis is in close proximity to the mainland. Using the examples of Shantin Technopole or the Loop, these places are the first choice of enterprises coming from the mainland or from overseas. That's why we will proceed with the Northern Metropolis at full steam. You will hear about the findings of consultancy studies of Cao Yiqiao. When we have the findings, we will consider how to proceed from a technical perspective. The studies are still ongoing. As the Development Bureau mentioned, there is still a series of follow-ups and studies as well as environmental assessments to be done. Our plan is that we will first proceed with the Northern Metropolis before we handle Lantau Tomorrow. In the future, we may need to adopt a new approach when it comes to the use of land in Cao Yiqiao. Operations of businesses are different. E-commerce is popular and common these days. So, but would there be any studies to stop the studies? Say, for example, stop some environmental assessment studies. Those that are ongoing, those that we have undertaken to do, will proceed. We may make a decision as to whether to start new ones. How much money will be involved? I'll give you an answer afterwards because we have to work out the sums. I don't want to just give you a ballpark figure because it may give rise to misunderstanding. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, first, the BPA agrees that it is not difficult to come up with a budget when there are limited resources. We think the direction of the budget is correct. We can see that the government understands the crux of the problem. They need to expand the source of revenue to address the deficit. It doesn't work if you rely solely on cutting cost. We understand that a lot of people from Europe, from the US would like to come to Hong Kong to set up companies. We want the government to do better when it comes to business promotion. We have a number of questions. First, land sale. Creating land should continue. We have to build a reserve for the future. Land sale is taking place at a slow speed. Will you launch incentives, say for example, payment by installments, and also land sale by application, or breaking up larger sites? The other question is about the air passenger departure tax. Well, $200 is quite expensive because if you fly to a nearby place, a short haul, the air ticket itself is $200. In relation to the boundary facility fees, Well, our country asks us to expand our businesses on the mainland, but if every time we have to pay $200 to cross the border, it may affect businesses. My third question is in relation to bond issuance. The BPA has been asking for a larger issuance a long time ago. Currently, the level of debt to GDP is low, lower than US, Europe, and much lower than that in Singapore, so we can increase the size of bond issuance. Can the government securitize bond issuance? By doing so, it will be easier for investors to buy and it will also boost circulation.
Financial Secretary, regarding whether we can divide lots up into smaller lots so as to lower the threshold of land sale, that is something that we're considering. If something is possible, we will definitely consider that option. But sometimes, due to economies of scale, it is probably better not to divide the lot up into smaller lots. And payment by installments is something that we can think about as well. So it is an option for consideration. In general, we will not be putting up commercial sites for sale. As for residential sites, we will soon announce the land sale program and what sites will be available in the first quarter. Right now, the residential property market is more or less stable, and we believe it is very important to stabilize expectations as well. On air passenger departure tax, right now it's $120. We think we can make some adjustments to increase revenue by increasing the relevant tax. I'm asking the FSTB and the Transport and Logistics Bureau to consider how to implement the boundary facilities fee. And we are still in the contemplation stage, so we welcome members' feedback. As for issuance of bonds, this is what we are doing. Thank you. Mr. Frankie Yik. I have received feedback from the transport and logistics sector. They do support the budget. And the government will establish the Maritime and Port Development Board this year. And we have promulgated several tax concessions related to the transport and logistics sector, especially the maritime sector. On the tax deductions for ship lessors, I think it will attract more companies to come to Hong Kong, and that will expand the maritime sector in Hong Kong. You will also provide half-rate tax concessions to commodity traders to come to Hong Kong. I believe that will also help develop the maritime sector. Smart port is the way to go, and at the next panel on economic development meeting, we will discuss the port community system. I am very glad to see the government taking the lead in development because we have been calling for that for many years, and we will discuss this item next year. I hope that we can have funding go through as soon as possible. As for green maritime development, we have all along been promulgating or advocating for the greenfield bunkering, the Liberal Party, and I'm very glad to hear that there will be tax concessions. That should help us set up a supply chain for green methanol. I hope that the government will have the detailed plans announced as soon as possible so as to allow shipping companies to incorporate such in their plans. On increasing government revenue, we have the following comments. We, of course, don't want to affect the public, but when we are talking about tolls and charges for trunk roads as well as increasing the fixed penalties for traffic-related offenses, I hope that there will be some exemptions because if you're increasing operating costs of the transport and logistics sector, in the end, the cost will just be transferred to consumers. So I urge the government to have a comprehensive consideration in relation to this. Thank you. I thank Mr. Frankie Yik for his comments in relation to fines for traffic-related offenses as well as tolls. I do note your suggestions in relation to commercial vehicles. Thank you. Next, Mr. Michael Tian. I have several points to make. I'm here. I said yesterday that this budget is prudent, but I guess we have no other options. We have all along been relying on an asset economy. We have a housing ladder in Hong Kong moving from public subsidized and then private housing, and we have seen falling private property prices, and people are no longer as interested in private property because of the falling prices. The government is also not putting up as many sites for sale. I think it is not instilling confidence in the public. For those who are paying mortgage and are seeing falling property prices, if you have a more confident stance, people will not be as worried about their falling asset values. You're saying that with $21 billion less, it is a lot, but I think it's worth it to make sure there is such confidence instilled in the market to encourage the public. I can see that we have some routes, a railway route that would go from Siu Lam to Hong Kong Island. Would you be issuing bonds to fund that project? Can't you issue more RMB denominated debts because we would have lower interests? Why didn't you consider this? Thank you. 3 questions. Financial Secretary, thank you. On land sale, if we are saying explicitly that we will not be putting up any private residential lots for sale in the next 2 years, I think it is inappropriate. We had at one point inadequate land supply resulting in skyrocketing property prices. I think everyone remembers that time. I think it is important to make sure we are creating land, but then we do not need to put up all such land for sale right away. I think with land sale, it is important to allow the private sector to have appropriate expectations that the government will be putting up land for sale at an appropriate pace. And we are having reference to the market situation when putting up lots for sale. We only put up 1 lot for sale recently. And we can see that with reference to supply, we want to be more prudent. We want to make sure there are appropriate expectations that land is being put up for sale at an appropriate pace, and that we are striking a balance. This should help stabilize the market. As for the land sale revenue being $21 billion, it is not an expectation. It is simply an estimate with reference to our land sale program. We have hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue every year, and we have been talking about being less reliant on land sale revenue. The plan we have shows our determination. We only have $1.1 trillion in RMB pool, and we need to think about whether the market can absorb the issuance. That's why we are issuing less RMB denominated bonds. On the question about railways, I think you have to follow that up on a special finance committee meeting, Mr. Tommy Chung. I think it is difficult to have derived such budget. We can, of course, have deeper cuts, but we have to strike a balance. I agree with what you said about commercial lots, that we should not be putting up commercial lots for sale at the moment. And we have seen great changes in the office market situation in the US, in Europe. We have seen changes in their commercial lot situation as well. I am only concerned about the timeline of development of the Northern Metropolis. We have been calling for more commercial lots because if you do not have enough commercial sites, then people living there would have to come work in the urban areas rather than working in the Northern Metropolis. I think we need to strike a balance with the development of the Northern Metropolis in relation to commercial developments. On education, I know that there will be clawback of funds from some UGC-funded universities, and the Education Bureau would have cuts as well. I want to talk about some figures to see in the coming year that we should do more. In 2007 and 2008, we have some figures. The government has appropriated funds for primary and secondary schools. In 2007, for primary schools, we have 385,000 students. We have 482,000 secondary school students. Before funding, we have $11 billion for primary schools, $18 billion for secondary schools, so approximately $30 billion. That is the figure in 2007. In 2023, for primary schools students, we only have 320,000 students, so less 60,000. And for secondary school students, we have now 328,000 students, and that was originally 480,000. So we had much less students than before. But then, as I said before, in 2007, we are giving $11 billion to primary school students and $18 billion. But then in 2023, you're giving $26.6 billion to primary school students and $33.2 billion for secondary schools. Mr. Tommy Chung, what is your question exactly? My question is simple, and I don't really need an answer. Can you consider for small group teaching? It does not necessarily help students. It only helps teachers in the sense that schools do not have to close and they will not be unemployed. I don't think small group teaching is doing much. So could you cut the funding a bit more? Instead of cutting the 2,500 allowance for the kindergarten, primary, and secondary school students. Thank you. On expenditure on education, we talked about we have 3 pillars of expenditure. 1, social welfare. 2, education. 3, healthcare. And the relevant policy bureaus will be reviewing their expenditure. We need to give them some time for them to review their expenditure, and then they will propose something, and then we can talk about the different options. Thank you, Mr. Shen Hailong. I would like to thank the Financial Secretary and his team for promulgating this budget. We would often say that we are limited in resources, and putting this together is not easy. I actually am pleasantly surprised by the budget, especially in relation to INT, but then I am also quite shocked by some manpower policies. I am a sense time consultant, and we attach great importance to the development of AI. We have seen AI being an engine for growth, so I thank the Financial Secretary and his team for investing in AI. On talent policies, I can see that the government does not have many new sources of revenue. They have imposed the air passenger departure tax as well as boundary facilities fee. And with the increase of $600 million, you are increasing the fees for talents. And yesterday, I had some other 2,000 talent friends who are watching the budget. I have received 630 odd complaints from them. They said with the additional sources of revenue, one of them or a lot of them are relating to charges for talent admission schemes. Let me first declare that I am the chairman of the Top Talent Services Association. We have seen the fees increase significantly to $1,300 for the visa fees. I want to ask the government to provide some justifications for such. I also want to complain that we do not have much in welfare expenditure and Article 36 of the Basic Law, they actually said that even though people are not permanent residents, they are entitled to benefits of the government. And it may say that we do not have welfare in particular for non-permanent residents, but then say for the newborn baby bonus, that is $20,000. Newly arrived talents, professionals, or AING, they wouldn't be entitled to such. So if we have a couple having come to Hong Kong for 6 years, they have paid taxes for 6 years, they are still not entitled to this $20,000 newborn baby bonus. So while you're increasing government revenue, can you provide more welfare to newly arrived? Thank you.
Unless I thank Mr. Xiang for his questions. Regarding visa fees and application fees, what we'd like to do is to recover administrative cost, because the previous level means that there was a discrepancy between the cost and the fees charged. We want to recover costs. The baby bonus are for Hong Kong permanent residents only. That is the current situation. But I have heard Mr. Xiang's comments. Next, Mr. Chew Kwok Keung. Just now, someone talked about small class teaching, which is not right. When it comes to education, it's about quality, not monetary figures. Please draw reference from the government's policy. Expenditure on education should increase and not decrease, and it should be no less than 4% of GDP, because no matter how poor the economy is, we should spend on education. Now we see expenditure cut by 2% on education. We find that regrettable. Education is an investment for the future. Well, elementary education is not like universities. They can't make a profit. But if you cut their expenditure and resources, there is a risk that quality might be affected. I ask the FS to understand the plight kindergartens are in. I ask the government to enhance financial flexibility for kindergartens. We are not asking for funding. We just ask for the financial management between half-day and whole-day kindergartens to be connected. There will be a bringback of $6 billion from seed capital funds. These include the language fund, the gifted education fund, the student activities support fund. These funds are set up for a specific purpose. With less investment, return will be affected. Using gifted education fund as an example, the investment return is to support the operation of gifted education. With a reduction in return, it means the fund will dry up. Can the FS tell us the impact of the cut to the development of the fund? I will defer to Mr. Lai, the Permanent Secretary. I thank Mr. Chu for his question. I'm sure members fully understand that if we want to restore fiscal balance, starting from 26, that is the next fiscal year, the magnitude of expenditure cut will increase. Funding allocation will be cut by 2%. That is the same for the Education Bureau. The Education Bureau will have to reprioritize resources allocation, look at a streamlining procedure, eliminating redundant work areas to better allocate resources. Let's leave the flexibility of funding allocation to the Education Bureau. In relation to the bringing back of $62 billion from the 6 funds, it's not the case that we bring back everything from these funds. We leave an amount sufficient for the operation for 5 years to ensure that the operation of the funds will not be affected. The remaining amount will be brought back to the government. As to what will happen 5 years later, we will see what the situation is. What I'd like to say that the bringing back of the surplus will not affect the operation of these funds. Next, Mr. Low Wai Kwok. Thank you. In terms of accelerating development through reform and innovation, invigorating the development of industries, well, I have something to say. Previously, we made a proposal to you. The main theme echoes that of the budget. We strongly support the various measures in this regard in the budget. I asked DeepSeek a question. My question was in relation to the various measures on supporting industries, and with the amount of resources devoted, how come that no startups like DeepSeek is born in Hong Kong? Well, I think DeepSeek has given us a very good analysis. It talked about the bottleneck we're in. It talked about how we can find potential opportunities. The AI has collated information from the internet. I'd like to read out the answer. It takes time to grow a key industry player, but you need to break away from the reliance of finances. You need to build patient capital, cultivate top-notch talents. If cooperation can be enhanced with the GBA, and in terms of AI quantum calculations, Hong Kong can make some breakthroughs. I think the answer from DeepSeek is very good. It's given us a lot of food for thought. The answer talked about top-notch talents. Well, the AFS talked about 180,000 talents coming to Hong Kong. Are they settling in Hong Kong? Are they just coming and going? Well, now, purchase of residential properties under the new capital investment entrance scheme is counted. That is very good. Whereas also the charge of $200 on private cars for boundary facilities fees, and also an increase to $200 in terms of air passenger departure tax. Well, this may conflict with your direction of building Hong Kong into an aviation hub. Will there be a waiver for people who only stay here within under 24 hours? FS. I thank Mr. Low for his question. Mr. Low talked about nurturing talents in INT. I have already covered that in my opening remark. We're working on it. I believe that you will see results soon. I've also replied to the boundary facilities fee. We're studying it, and we will talk to relevant bureaus and departments. I would like to declare that I'm one of the members of the board of the Airport Authority. I understand that, there are more factors than the Airport Authority when it comes to the air passenger departure tax. Mr. Chen Hengpen, I think you have come up with some ideas to invest in the future and in our economy. We have a fiscal deficit, and there is a reason for that. We had social events. We had the epidemic. The deficit was caused by these reasons, but we are very confident in the future. In paragraph 241, you mentioned that when it comes to a time of deficit, we still need to identify opportunities. The FS also talked about making flexible use of market forces. And of course, in relation to infrastructure, we can leverage on market forces. We can ask the market to jointly take forward the projects for us. But so far, I have not seen any specific measures. In terms of projects in the Northern Metropolis, has the government considered using market forces? When will these projects be launched? If you come to the finance committee for funding of over $10 billion, then we are concerned about the coffer. If you can make use of market forces, then you can put our minds at ease. In relation to the $200 boundary facility fees, northbound travel of private cars is very popular. We're talking about southbound vehicles into Hong Kong. Now you propose the charge of $200 for boundary facilities fee. That means you have to pay $200 on top of the $300 to cross the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. So it costs you $600 to go to the mainland if you are driving. Will it drive down the utilization of the bridge? Will it affect the southbound vehicles coming to Hong Kong? There are some vehicles coming to Hong Kong to, say, conduct a business meeting, and then they'll return. $200 not be much, but it's still a cost to be taken into account. So 2 questions. Northern Metropolis projects as well as the $200 fees. There are many ways to make use of market forces. Large-scale land disposal, institute, land exchange, cooperation with the private sector, land exchange in other forms. There are many different ways. We've heard members' views in relation to the land departure tax on private cars, $200. There are many different ways to cross the boundary. If you drive, we're talking about people with better means. We have the principle of user pay principle. If the user can make some contributions towards cost recovery, then it's something that we need to consider. But I must emphasize that this is on the drawing board. We have to look further into it. We will fully consider the views of the sectors before we make a decision.
Reverend Peter Kuhn. Thank you. Chair, thank you, Financial Secretary and the team for promulgating the budget. I have asked the Financial Secretary several times a question, but I haven't really got an answer. Maybe I just understood it wrong. I think you have a broad brush approach with cutting civil service establishment, but then in general, you are only cutting the departmental expenditure. You have two parts. You haven't really cut the staff costs, but then for the one-off funding for social welfare sector under the social welfare department, there will be a lump sum. For the $20 billion lump sum, it would include staff costs as well as the departmental costs. If you can say that for the CSSA, you wouldn't be cutting any expenditure. But then we also have people who are helping CSSA recipients, and you're cutting funding to them. So you are still hurting the social welfare sector. For social workers, they want to help the underprivileged. So while we accept you are not cutting expenditure or funding for the underprivileged, but you're cutting expenditure for those who are helping the underprivileged, it is not ideal. You can't have social workers tell service users that they need to purchase relevant vouchers in order to benefit from the services. Last year, you are saying you'll cut only 1% of the expenditure, but now you're cutting 2% of the expenditure, and the cumulative percentage has now been in the 2 digits. We are not good with calculations because we're not in the business sector. We're in the social welfare sector. We are very good at helping others. Can you have pity on us, on the sector, so that we can be exempted from the cut in expenditure? It's not that we want special treatment, but then for the smaller organizations, you would grant some exemptions, but then for large organizations, they are not doing too well either. They may be larger in scale, but then they are not exactly profitable. So please, I want to hear what the Financial Secretary thinks about this. Thank you. All right, Financial Secretary, I'll ask the Permanent Secretary answer this question. Thank you. While we do understand Reverend Peter Kuhn's concerns, we will implement the 2% cut in expenditure, but it's not a broad brush approach. Let me clarify this. For social security allowance or CSSA, we haven't cut any of the expenditure. We haven't cut civil service pension either. It's just that with recurrent expenditure of departments, we will have a baseline target for cutting expenditure. We also have some flexibility. In general, the Financial Secretary would have for each envelope sent to the head of the department, they would have 2% less in that envelope. As for how the heads of the departments will cut the expenditure, whether they will cut, say, 2/3 of an area, or they will have a specific department expenditure cut a bit more, or whether they will cut certain funding to certain projects, or will they cut staffing costs, there will be flexibility for the heads of departments, and it's the same with social welfare. Thank you. Mr. Robert Lee. We have seen in this budget many measures to cut costs and improve welfare. There are many different measures, but I would like to focus on measures that focus on the financial market. We have seen recently in the stock market, we have seen good turnover. We have also seen an increasing number of IPOs as well as the listing amount. We have also seen that we do face some challenges. We need to be more diversified and we need to implement some reforms. Apart from focusing on traditional securities, we have for gold, different assets, and we are using technologies. We also have some measures on virtual assets. I want to focus on gold in particular. From what you know about the central authority stance, the top level design, with our working group on gold market development, promoting gold market development, it has started its work last year. We, of course, want to improve coordination among various sectors, and we, of course, want to do more business for banks or MNEs or just smaller companies engaging in the gold trade. What does the country think about developing the country into a gold powerhouse? I'm not asking you to disclose sensitive information, but I just want to know more about in terms of what the central government thinks. How can we better tie in with the central government's policies? I also want to declare that my company does business relating to gold. Thank you. Financial Secretary. I will ask Mr. Christopher Ho to answer the questions of the member. Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Robert Lee for participating in the working group's work, and he has provided us with good feedback. From a macro perspective, in last year's policy address and this year's budget, we have talked about gold trading. As you may know, we have uncertainties in the external environment, and people now have a higher demand for gold. And we also have parts for trading, we have parts for warehousing, and we are thus working on it in two different ways. For the latitude or longitude wise, we are trying to explore if there is more room for expanding gold business. We do have a gold market before, but if we are to internationalize our market, or it's not about internationalization really, we need to have more regional participants. We need to construct an ecosystem, and we have been talking about locally as well as over-the-counter trading. Now, for warehousing, trading, and then settlement, and then we have derivatives. We have also a latitudinal supply chain. So we need to consider feedback from the relevant sectors. We would want to have a report published this year. Once we have the foundations, we need to think about how we are constructing an ecosystem, and we are listening to feedback of stakeholders for this. Thank you. Thank you. Next, Mr. Sonny Tan. I would like to thank the Financial Secretary for incorporating the feedback of various sectors and especially the BPA. We have many support measures for development of the economy and supporting the SMEs. With international connections, we have all along been a platform for going global, for mainland companies to go global, as well as for overseas companies to come to Hong Kong. We have all along been liaising with different units in business sector, and they are representing companies that want to go global or would have their operations moved to Hong Kong. Is there any way for the government to provide more support to business associations to deepen our connections with mainland associations so as to provide more support to the enterprises. I also like to thank the Financial Secretary for enhancing the arrangements for the Bud Fund. We are suggesting for 100,000 or dollar or less projects, we will have an e-commerce express. And I thank the Financial Secretary for that. I want to ask if there will be further enhancements so that we will be increasing the funds from 100,000 to say 200 or even 300,000 so as to better support enterprises to upgrade and market the brands. Thank you, Financial Secretary. We welcome different companies working with different business associations, and we do thank the business associations for helping enterprises to enter into the mainland market as well as helping mainland companies go global. In accordance with industry demand, we now have a simplified version of the Bud Fund arrangements. We'll see if there is any room for enhancing the arrangements. We'll have, say, the CEDB continue to follow up on the relevant arrangements. The chief executive and the different senior officials have all along been trying to promote the deepening of connections, and we had delegations before visiting different places. And we want to work with mainland companies so that there will be better interactions between the different parties. Any follow-up questions? If not, Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Financial Secretary. Or good afternoon, Financial Secretary. I can see that the budget is forward-looking and it has tried to alleviate the fiscal deficit. I do support the budget. I have two questions. We, of course, are concerned about the public financial situation. And in paragraph 234, it talked about in particular that in the long term, we need to review expenditure in social welfare, education, and healthcare to make sure things are sustainable. And in particular, it would have reference to the demographic changes in Hong Kong. On demographics, the last time we had a comprehensive review or analysis was 10 years ago. I want to ask if the Financial Secretary has any plans. I do understand that we would have the relevant policy bureaus review the expenditure, but then can we take a more macro perspective? No matter the population, the number of people we have in Hong Kong, can we have a comprehensive demographic survey to see how we can be sustainable with our use of public resources? Next. After yesterday's budget announcement, I have received many inquiries from young parents on the $2,500 allowance that has been cancelled. And we have been encouraging young families to bear children. We have the $20,000 newborn baby bonus. We also have the various childcare services. But now you're cutting the $2,500 allowance, which is very much cherished by these young parents. So is it like a broad brush approach that you would be cutting the allowance altogether, or is it possible that for different groups, depending on their different circumstances, you may still provide some sort of support? Thank you.
FS, thank you. I thank Mr. Leung for his questions. I will defer to the Permanent Secretary to answer the part regarding the $2,500. Mr. Lai, all policy bureaus have to make good use of public resources. the Education Bureau will have to reconsider the allocation of resources on priority areas. After the consideration, a decision was made to scrap the student subsidy scheme. Under the scheme, $2,500 a year is available for students in primary, secondary, as well as kindergarten. It's non-means tested. So all students are eligible. But now money is tight. The Education Bureau would like to make better use of resources. They think that scrapping the scheme can enable them to devote the resources to other much needed areas. For parents, they can continue to receive subsidies in other forms, say for example textbooks and other activities. Can we hear from the FS on population planning? This is an important issue. It doesn't just affect the public services we have mentioned. It also has a bearing on talents as well as labor market. We need to have a more focused discussion. Dr. Tik Chi Yuen. We have been rehashing the same thing. For a number of years, expenditure of NGOs have been cut. I oppose to that. Someone, before I came here, asked me to calm down and asked me to not to be too agitated. Since 2000, for social welfare sectors, there was the lump sum grant. Over the years, there has been a cut by 10%, but the funding service agreement has not changed at all. We're required to put in 100% of the services. So we now receive 90% of the funding and deliver 100% of the work. You now ask us to cut another 6 to 7%. Someone who is a head of an NGO told me that there is no room for further cut. Well, a large share of the expenditure is on manpower. So if you ask them to cut expenditure, that means they have to let people go. Elderly people told me that they see cuts in subsidies, transportation, as well as other areas. However, senior officials get to keep their salary. Well, social welfare is a safety net for the grassroots. It should not be changed in any way. But now the government asks for a 2% cut. It's across the board. Is there any room in the operation of NGOs to help them? Say, for example, if the Bureau cuts more, then the cut for NGO expenditure can be less. Can you give us a better arrangement? FS. I thank Dr. Tik for his comments and question. I'll defer to the Permanent Secretary. Thank you. I understand the concern of Dr. Tik. As I said before, there may be an expenditure cut of 2% for all departments and bureaus, but for an individual bureau, there is flexibility. Say, there will be a different extent of reduction for different departments. I understand that the Labor and Welfare Bureau has used this flexibility before. NGOs of different sizes may have a different percentage of reduction. I think we should leave the flexibility to individual bureaus. Any supplementary from Dr. Tik? Understand now the ball is in the court of the LWB. I'll talk to them. I give my appreciation to the Secretary. For smaller NGOs, they may be saved. But nowadays, the situation is different. For larger NGOs, there may not be any room for them to make another cut. I will talk to the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Mr. Tony Tse. Well, the finances are quite poorly. The government has put in place a number of measures to strengthen their physical management. I also thank the Financial Secretary for taking on board a large number of suggestions from G19. I would like to follow up on a lot of issues, but I will focus first on 3 points. First, a cut of 10,000 posts. Based on what do you make the decision? Because different departments may have different problems, or is it going to be across the board? We support a pay freeze for civil servants. It's a difficult time. We all need to do our part. I want to know, will the incremental pay be frozen as well? How do you make use of the salary increment to reward civil servants with a good performance? Well, we understand that there will be $120 billion for public works. It's an investment for our future in the coming 5 years. We support that. Will you categorize different projects, say, for example, infrastructure, construction, consultant fees? Will you set a percentage of the spending so that it will not be lopsided? I thank the FS for not forgetting about training, especially in the construction sector. The assistance will enable them to continue to make contributions towards the sector. FS, about pay freeze and the cuts of 10,000 posts. I'll defer to Mr. Lai. The reduction in civil service establishment. This is related to the 2% cut for the coming 3 consecutive years. It goes in tandem because about 60% of recurrent expenditures related to salaries. Without a reduction in establishment, it may be difficult to do. But don't worry, yesterday the Secretary for Civil Service has told all civil servants there won't be any voluntary retirement, there won't be any mandatory retirement. It will be done through streamlining procedures. Regarding the pay freeze, as mentioned, all executive, judiciary, legislature, and members of district councils will receive a pay freeze. For civil servants, as long as the performance is above standard, the civil servant will continue to have the pay increment. $120 billion in public works expenditure. We want to make sure that there is sufficient resources. The member asks us to make sure that the expenditure will go to not just construction but on training as well as consultant as well. We will forward your view. Mr. Lam Chun Sing, I would like to know more about the reasons behind the pay freeze. There is a well-established mechanism, the pay trend survey. There will be the net pay trend indicator, in addition to a number of factors. The government's fiscal position is one of the factors. This time round, how come you did not wait till the middle of the year for the survey? Why did you rush to make this decision? Is it the case that the established mechanism of the pay trend survey is not effective? Is it the case that in the coming few years it will be the financial secretary that makes the decision in the budget on pay of civil servants? Well, the establishment and the mechanism takes into account the pay changes in the private market, morale, as well as other factors. Has the FS considered these factors as well? Now, I want to ask about the cash subsidy. They are for people who live in subdivided units while waiting for public housing. In June this year, this cash subsidy scheme will cease to operate. However, you have to wait for 3 years to be allotted a unit in the light public housing. Will you extend the scheme by 3 years to make sure that all these tenants have moved into light public housing because they are not on CSSA and they have not received any other form of assistance? FS. When we consider a pay freeze, we consider the government's fiscal position. This year, all accountable officials and the civil service will have a pay freeze. We think it is appropriate. And the pay freeze will apply to the legislature, the judiciary, executive authorities, and the district councils. The pay trend survey, the adjustment mechanism, will be suspended for 1 year. The cash subsidy scheme will stop in June this year. In the meantime, we have transitional housing on top of other schemes. So at this moment in time, we have no plan to extend that scheme. Mr. Andrew Lam, on a number of occasions, it's mentioned that one of the factors that contribute to Hong Kong's success is our connectivity with the mainland and other places. We attract people who want to do big businesses to Hong Kong. We don't want to call you a skilled cook trying to make a feast out of nothing. You have talked a lot about Hong Kong's future in the budget. At the same time, you said that the main focus of the budget is to control government expenditure. This is the main focus. But I'd like you to pay attention to how to create a favorable investment and spending environment. When we rely on innovation and technology, then you realize that there are a lot of resources devoted into it, and it has great potential. In Shentin Technopole, it has an area of 300 hectares. But this Shentin Technopole site is of poor quality. It's like it's a plastic basin waiting to receive quality water. And you have to wait before this plastic basin is built. FS, you often talked about time waits for no one. Do you have better plans to expedite these projects? Are there any ways to make better use of existing resources for better interface? I believe that even if we leave AI to one side, the world will continue to use AI. And then you talk about the cuts of 10,000 posts within this year in the government. I think it has to be continued. I don't support firing people because they are part of a family. They are important cogs in the machine that provides public service. Does the government have a better plan? Say, for example, retraining, job matching, to bring down the civil service establishment in the long run?
Financial Secretary, let me first have the Deputy Financial Secretary answer the question on Northern Metropolis development. I think Mr. Andrew Lam said correctly the Northern Metropolis would be able to provide much space. It can provide 17 times the space in the typo space. And the Hotel Corporation zone would have its first intake in this quarter. And Cyberport Phase 5 is half of its existing size. And you know the Science Park Corporation has been working very hard as well. If they have been asking tenants that do not meet their requirements to move out so that they can house new enterprises. So we have short, mid, long-term solutions. On the cutting of establishment, it will not stop within the current term government, but we are just saying what we'll do before the current term ends. The 2% cut will go all the way up to 27-28. So after the next term government takes office, it will continue to apply. We will continue to cut civil service establishment. As for how we can equip more skills for civil servants, we are communicating with the Civil Service College and with different departments. We have been promoting the use of technology to not only enhance efficiency, but to streamline the workflow. Thank you. Professor Priscilla Leung. We have $100 billion fiscal deficit with limited resources. I'm impressed that the Financial Secretary has derived this budget. We should all try to work together through this difficult time. And I think we have been quite prudent with the saving of costs. Many were concerned about how we could cut the expenditure relating to $2 transport concession scheme. And I think we now have a soft landing. We have minimized the impact on different groups now. And for the 60 to 64-year-old group, I have gauged their views. I think in general they accept the proposals here. As for the pay freeze, I think everyone accepts this. And in 2003, within the university, I have taken the lead to freeze our pay. I think it is something that we have to work together to save costs, and I think we have a common goal. I do accept the two relevant proposals. On the IP-related measures and AI R&D Institute, I do support the relevant measures. You will be, however, changing the tax structure. I was worried that you may hurt our competitiveness with the introduction of taxes. I myself actually accept the boundary facilities fee and the air passenger departure tax, but I think you need to provide some exemptions, especially for commercial vehicles that are in the form of private cars departing via land boundary control points. I think for university-related measures, I think we are investing more in INT, and I think the $10 billion Race Plus is not enough. You should invest more in that while cutting expenditure in other areas. I think we haven't done much in providing ancillary support. In Tsinghua, they have a campus. In Shanghai, they also have relevant supporting facilities. So how can we make sure universities have their supporting measures and facilities to make sure they can research more into INT? I also have some comments to make. After the Lehman Brothers incident in 2008, we have like a fund. We had a fund for helping people transfer to other positions. Now that we're cutting 10,000 posts, we need to make sure we are helping those who are going to lose their jobs transfer to some other jobs, say become consultants or whatever. Thank you. This is just a comment. Financial Secretary, we will have a university town in the northern metropolis. We have a world-renowned education sector in Hong Kong. We have many students, mainland or overseas, wanting to come to Hong Kong to study. And we want them to stay here to build our economy together. We have therefore reserved a significant area in the northern metropolis to build this university town. As for transformation, with the Employees Retraining Board, they have many different courses. They do have some subsidies. And for those who are in service, there will also be the Continuing Education Fund or other subsidies that can provide incentives for their retraining. Thank you. Mr. Lau Kok-fan, I thank the Financial Secretary for putting much effort into deriving this budget. I think there is room for some minor adjustments. I think other members may have mentioned some of these, but I want to make sure we are putting an emphasis on the relevant measures. The $2 transport concession scheme was promulgated to encourage elderly persons to go outside more. I think we shouldn't adopt a broad brush approach. For 65-year-olds or above, can you maintain the existing arrangement? Because for those living further away, say in Yunlong, they need to pay more with your new arrangements. For the middle class, we have talked about it is hard for them to really rear children. We do have the textbook assistance scheme, but then I think they still need some support. Can we have $2,500 allowance become a more targeted allowance, or we can provide half-rate allowances? As other DAB members said, we need to make sure we are trying to save costs, but we also have to meet public needs. On investing in future, I support investing in the development of the northern metropolis, and it will help with the development of the economy of Hong Kong. But we have seen with many new development areas in new territories, while we are investing in it, there will be some sort of revenue source that is coming in, say from land sale. Say for Fanling North and Kutong North new development areas, we have a balance between revenue and costs. We are able to break even, or we may even be able to make a bit of a profit. It may be hard for the northern metropolis, but can we have more innovative models, say have a flexible supply of land, or we can have some industrial parks so that we can release some land for use for certain parties so that we can generate some sort of revenue early on. And I think that will be able to help the economy. I think the first few questions have been asked. I think especially the last question is quite important. Financial Secretary, we do note your comments on the $2 transport concession scheme, as many other members have expressed concerns. As for the $2,500 allowance, for those who have financial difficulties, we have other assistance schemes such as the textbook assistance scheme that can help. So we think the current arrangement is appropriate. I won't talk much about the tenant purchase scheme on the housing letter. We need to have comprehensive consideration on the development of Northern Metropolis. We do have a cash flow imbalance. We need to first invest in the development of Northern Metropolis. Once we are selling land, we will be able to recover our costs. But then we are also adopting different models of development. We are encouraging the private sector, different companies who would like to move into the Northern Metropolis. They can create job opportunities and make contributions to the economy. We can negotiate with these companies, or whether we can reserve some lots for the particular companies for infrastructure and attracting capital and invest and the different investment. And we have actually marked 3 sites for pilot arrangement like such. Thank you. Last to speak, Mr. Look Chung Hong. I think I'm quite lucky. With the $100 billion fiscal deficit, there is a need to save costs and develop new sources of revenue. We need to make sure we are making a targeted approach. We don't want to adopt a broad brush approach to impact on a large, many different people, and that has actually misled people into thinking there are no other good measures. In fact, after the announcement of the budget, I have heard many feedback from different groups, and in fact this morning I have visited different districts to gauge their views. And on the $2 transport concession scheme, in general, we have maintained some arrangements, so I guess I accept that. But with the broad brush approach of canceling the $2,500 allowance, parents are dissatisfied. And with the school allowance, it has reduced costs of childbearing, essentially encouraging childbearing. We do have the newborn baby bonus of $20,000, but then you are canceling this allowance. It seems that you're having a conflicting policy stance. With this allowance of $2,500, parents are very happy with this. I think you are using resources properly if you are dispersing such allowance. It's not just with grassroots parents. For middle class parents, it is a significant expenditure to pay the different expenses, tuition, uniform, textbooks. If you're canceling the $2,500 allowance, most households can't help but cut other of their household expenditure. In turn, that may affect the economy. So why have you chosen to cut this allowance? Have you considered other alternatives? Have you considered a non-broad brush approach? This affects 800,000 students, and this has been regularized since 2020. It has been 5 years. Without prior notice, you're cutting this allowance. You didn't even mention this in your budget speech. So is this approach very much different with cutting other government expenditure? It is quite contrary to your existing approach of being quite explicit with things. As Mr. Kenneth Leung asked, is there any way to reverse this? Can we only cut part of the allowance? Can the financial secretary promise that when we have a better fiscal situation, you will have this allowance back? Thank you.
主席，
Aves, thank you. I thank Mr. Look for his question. As the Permanent Secretary mentioned, the cut of 2% in expenditure applies to all government departments and bureaux. The actual operations is left to the head of bureaus and departments, having taken into account the situation of the respective departments and bureaus. A basket of factors will be taken into account. I believe that the Education Bureau has talked to sector representatives as well as legislators. A cut in expenditure, regardless of the sector, will affect people. We ask for your understanding. In the past, when there was a surplus, we tried our best to lend support to different sectors. Now, we face financial pressure. We ask for your understanding. We ask for your cooperation for us to work together so that we can focus on boosting our economy, focus on creating new growth so that everyone can earn more. I think that is the overriding principle. I ask for your understanding. How come that you have not taken the approach to talk to other people just like the $2 scheme? I think the FS has fully explained his views. The time is up. I thank the FS, the Deputy FS, as well as his team. Between the 7th and the 11th of April, the Finance Committee will hold special FC meetings. Members may make use of the relevant system on the members' platform to submit their questions. The deadline is midnight 5th of March this year. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.